Growth can become another form of performance. You read the books, you listen to the podcasts, you journal, you go to therapy, you set boundaries, you learn the language, you can explain your patterns, you can even identify your triggers. You know exactly what you should do. But then life happens. And somehow you find yourself responding like the person you said you outgrown. Because knowing better and living differently, those are two completely different things. Growth isn't proven by what you understand. It's proven by what has become part of you. And eventually there comes a point where you have to stop asking, what else do I need to learn? And start asking, what have I already learned that I haven't learned how to live? Because transformation isn't complete when you discover a new version of yourself. It's complete when that version of you becomes the one who shows up without having to think about it. Let's get into it. Welcome to Shoe Talk, the house where we don't just talk about growth, we build it. Because awareness is your blueprint. Intention, well, that's your foundation. And legacy is your keystone. Every episode invites you into a different room of the house where together we'll challenge the way we think, live, lead, and build. Today's room is the integration room. And this room is special because it closes the becoming wing. We entered this wing understanding that becoming requires us to stretch beyond who we've been. We walk through discomfort where we learn that growth rarely feels comfortable while it's happening. We entered failure where we separated what happened from who we are. We practice patience, learning how to keep building when the results weren't visible yet. We discovered resilience, learning what it means to rise without pretending we were never hurt. And most recently, we entered expansion, where we learned that becoming more also requires building the capacity to hold more. But now comes the part that we don't talk about enough. What happens after you've learned all that? You integrate it. Because becoming isn't about collecting lessons. It's about becoming someone who lives them. Welcome to the integration room. Integration is the process of bringing the pieces together. It's when the lesson stops being something you heard and starts becoming something you practice. It's when the boundary you learn to set becomes the boundary you actually maintain. When the confidence you've been working on changes the opportunities you're willing to pursue. When the healing you've done changes the relationships you're willing to entertain. When the standards you've developed begin influencing your everyday decisions. That's integration. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about growth is that once you understand something, you've mastered it. No, awareness and mastery are not the same thing. You can know that you need boundaries and still struggle to say no. You can understand your worth and still entertain people that don't value you. You can know rest is important and still feel guilty every time you stop working. You can know you deserve more and still shrink when more finally arrives. Knowing gives you information. Integration changes your behavior. And that's why this room matters. Because if the lessons we've learned never change the way we live, then we've collected information, but we haven't transformed. So here's our awareness check. Before we can build anything, we have to become aware of what's really happening. And today I want you to ask yourself, what do I already know that my life doesn't reflect yet? I've had moments where I realized I was doing a lot of growing, but I was also doing a lot of collecting ideas, plans, goals, even collecting versions of the woman I wanted to become. And because I'm naturally a builder, my instinct is always, okay, what's next? What's the next project? What's the next level? What's the next goal? What needs to be fixed, created, improved, launched, accomplished? And I've literally sat in front of a list of everything I'm building, trying to figure out what else I needed to add. When in reality, I needed to ask myself, girl, when are you going to actually live some of this? When are you going to stop planning for the woman you're becoming long enough to recognize the woman you've already become? Because you can spend so much time chasing the next version of yourself that you never gave yourself permission to actually be the version you've already worked so hard to become. And that awareness changed something for me. I stopped asking, what else should I be doing? And started asking, does the life I'm living actually reflect what I say matters to me? If family matters, does my schedule reflect that? If peace matters, do my relationships reflect that? If health matters, do my habits reflect that? If purpose matters, does where I spend my energy reflect that? If I say I value myself, do my decisions reflect that? Because eventually the things you say you value have to become visible in the way you live. And so does your growth. Not because you need to prove anything to anybody else, but because at some point you should be able to see the evidence of your own becoming. And that's where it clicked for me. Integration is where growth becomes evidence. You don't need to apply every lesson at once. Sometimes we make growth harder because we tried to become an entirely different person overnight. New routine, new boundaries, new mindset, new habits, new goals, new everything. And then 3 weeks later, we're exhausted. Integration isn't about changing everything immediately. It's about allowing one truth to change one decision. And then allowing that decision to become a pattern. Maybe the lesson is boundaries. Your integration might simply be pausing before automatically saying yes. Maybe the lesson is patience. Your integration might be refusing to rush a decision just because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable. What if your lesson is resilience? Your integration might be allowing yourself to recover instead of expecting yourself to bounce back immediately. Small decisions are where transformation becomes sustainable. Awareness shows us what needs to change. Intention determines what we do next. Your old patterns will occasionally return. That's an important fact. Integration does not mean you'll never struggle again. Sometimes you'll respond the old way. You'll overthink. You'll people please. You'll doubt yourself. You'll procrastinate. You'll fall back into a habit you thought you had outgrown. And your first instinct might be, see, I haven't changed. But growth isn't measured by never returning to an old pattern. Sometimes growth is simply recognizing it faster. Maybe something used to take you 6 months to recognize. Now it takes 6 weeks. Eventually, it'll take 6 days, then 6 hours. Maybe one day you'll catch yourself while it's happening. That's growth. Integration isn't perfect. It's awareness becoming quicker and intentional correction becoming stronger. The goal isn't to become someone who never gets it wrong. The goal is to become someone who knows how to return to themselves when they do. Eventually, growth has to become identity. There is a difference between saying, I'm trying to become disciplined. I'm someone who keeps commitments to myself. There's a difference between I'm learning boundaries and I'm someone who protects what I worked hard to build. There is a difference between I'm working on confidence and I'm someone who trusts myself. At some point, the language changes because the behavior has changed. You've practiced it enough that it isn't something you're trying on anymore. It's becoming who you are. And that's the deepest level of integration. When you stop constantly introducing yourself to the person you're becoming, because you finally realized that's me now. One of the hardest things about growth for me has been realizing that every new version of my life requires a new relationship with my capacity. Because I can carry a lot. And for a long time, being able to carry a lot made me believe I was supposed to carry everything. There is a difference. As life expanded, my responsibilities expanded. My dreams expanded. The things I wanted to build, those expanded. And there were moments where I was trying to fit a bigger life into the same habits, expectations, and capacity that belonged to an earlier version of me. That didn't work at all. Because expansion without integration becomes overwhelming. I couldn't just say I wanted peace. I had to build differently. I couldn't just say certain things were a priority. I had to give them actual space. I couldn't keep measuring success by how much I could carry. I had to start asking whether everything I was carrying actually belonged to me. And I'm still practicing that. Because integration isn't one big dramatic decision. Most of the time, it's 100 quiet decisions nobody sees. It's saying no. It's changing the schedule. It's asking for help. It's resting without explaining yourself. It's choosing not to respond. It's realizing that something that once worked for you doesn't anymore. And that it's okay. It's choosing alignment over familiarity. That's intention in action, not announcing who you're becoming, living like her or him. Before we leave this room, I want you to sit with a few questions. Where in your life are you avoiding awareness? What truth do you already know but keep pretending you haven't seen? Where have your intentions drifted? What did you once say mattered to you that your current choices no longer reflect? And finally, what decision do you need to make this week? Not next month, not tomorrow, not when things calm down, not when you're more confident, this week. One decision that would bring the life you're living closer to the life you're saying you're building. Growth begins the moment honesty does. And by writing it down, you can hold yourself accountable. And because we're literally standing in the integration room, we're going to practice what this room teaches. One habit to begin. Create a weekly alignment check. Once a week, ask yourself, do my calendar, energy, spending, relationships, and habits reflect what I say matters to me? Not perfectly, but honestly. One mindset to adopt. I don't need more information. I need deeper implementation. Before buying another book, saving another motivational video, or searching for another answer, ask. Ask yourself, what have I practiced what I already know? One excuse to leave behind. I'm still working on myself. Of course, you're still working on yourself. We all are. But don't use growth as the waiting room. You don't have to become completely healed, completely confident, completely disciplined, or even ready before, or completely ready before you start living differently. Some lessons can only integrate once you actually start using them. Awareness gave you that blueprint. Intention is how you start building. Now, I want to take this one step further because growth was never supposed to stop with you. Ask yourself, if this became the way you lived every day, what kind of legacy would you build? If your children watched you trust yourself, if the people you lead watched you take accountability, if the people you loved watched you protect your peace without becoming hardened, if the people coming behind you watched you fail, recover, wait, stretch, and keep becoming, what would they learn about how to live? Because legacy isn't only what people remember about you after you're gone. Legacy is what people learn from the way you live while you're here. Every boundary teaches something. Every decision teaches something. Every risk teaches something. Every time you choose differently, you're leaving evidence that a different way is possible. Your legacy isn't built after your life is over. You're building it right now, in real time. And now that we've spent an entire wing becoming, it's time to ask a different question. Can you trust yourself to live like the person you've become? Because becoming aware of who you want to be is one thing. Keeping your word to that person is another. It's easy to talk about the life you want, the standards you want to have, the boundaries you want to keep, the things you say matter. But eventually, your growth requires something deeper than intention. It requires a covenant, not with the world, not with the expectations other people have placed on you, with yourself. Can you trust yourself to follow through? Will your actions match what you say you believe? Will you main, will you remain committed when motivation disappears? Will you protect the things you've decided are non-negotiables? And when nobody's watching, will the life you're actually living align with the person you say you're becoming? Those are the questions waiting for us in the next wing of this house. We're leaving the becoming wing and entering the covenant wing because becoming taught us how to grow into who we're meant to be. Covenant That'll teach us how to keep our word to that person. And before we can build anything lasting, we have to be able to trust the person holding the blueprint, us, ourselves. If today's conversation challenged you, encouraged you, or gave you something to reflect on, please share it with someone who's building their own house. Be sure to follow Shoe Talk so you never miss an episode. And remember, awareness is your blueprint. Intention, that's your foundation. Legacy, your keystone. Until next time, protect your peace, honor your growth, and keep building your house. I'll see you in the next room.